Assalamualaikum to Madam and all students. We hope all here in the pink of health. We from Group 10 will be present of Abbasid Architecture. First and foremost, I will introduce my group members and the topic they will present on. I, Hafiz Bin Selamat, will give an introduction, historical context, and conclusion to Abbasid Architecture. Second, Abbasid era will be presented by Azmina Binti Roslan. Third, Liyana Binti Rezali will present the Abbasid architecture characteristic. Fourth, the Great Mosque of Samara will be presented by Nurul Hidayah Binti Mohamad Shamri. Lastly, Dahiyah Binti Abdul Jalil will present the topic final is Ibn Tulun Mosque. Without wasting time, let's start to the first topic, that is, what is Abbasid architecture? Introduction of Abbasid architecture. Between 750 and 945 years, the Abbasid caliphs, mainly in Mesopotamia, established Abbasid architecture. The Abbasids were inspired by Central Asian form after inheriting Persian architectural tradition in Mesopotamia. They developed their own individual styles, particularly in the decorating of their structure. Despite the fact that the Abbasids lost control of significant areas of their kingdom after 850 years, the architecture was emulated by successor states in Iran, Egypt, and North Africa. For historical background of Abbasid architecture, between 750 and 900 years, the Islamic Golden Age is claimed to have happened. Iran, Mesopotamia, Arabia, and the eastern of southern Mediterranean were ruled by the Abbasid caliphs. The arrival of the Muslim religious result is change in requirement for the religious building. In 762 years, the Caliphs al-Mansur established Baghdad on the Tigris, which quickly grew to become one of the world's greatest cities. Local dynasties gained actual independence in Khorasan, Samadid, Egypt, Tulunids, and Ifriqiya, Abbasid.
I will be describing the title of the Abbasid era. Established in Baghdad and founded in 750 to 1258 century, the Abbasid dynasty seized political leadership of the Islamic world from the Umayyad caliphs in the middle of the 8th century, asserting their position as male descendants of Mohamad through his uncle Al-Abbas to legitimize their claim to the caliphate. For everyone's information, Abbasid architecture is marked by a new monumental scale, the use of structural system composed of massive brick piers and arches and decoration of brick and carved and molded stucco. Next, moving the caliphate capital from Syria to Iraq, where they founded the new city of Baghdad, the Abbasids appropriated much of the Eastern artistic traditions of the former Sasanian Empire into their urban design and architecture. In this content, the new capital city of Baghdad was founded near the ancient Sasanian capital of Ctesiphon, and with its symbolical church-round plan epitomized an incorporation of Eastern models of kingship into a new architectural ethos. After that, the fusion of Eastern traditions with building types established during the Umayyad period is especially evident in Abbasid mosques. Though they continued to utilize the Umayyad rectangular hypostyle plan with arcaded, courtyard, and covered prayer hall, the Abbasid constructed most characterized by their monumental scale and the incorporation of brick construction, stucco ornament, and architectural forms developed in Mesopotamia and regions to the east. Number 4. Let's take a look at the Great Mosque of Samara. The Great Mosque was completely built by Al-Mutawakkil at Samara, still the largest mosque in the world, with its fortified appearance reliance on brick construction and the spiral minaret, perhaps drawing on the ancient Near Eastern tradition of the ziggurat. A zayat aligned with the mihrab exemplifies the Abbasid mosque type. Lastly, in contrast to the relatively modest and self-contained Umayyad states, the Abbasid palaces of Samara that founded in 836, abandoned 892, and the Josek al-Horni and Bait al-Khalifa at circa 836, including military quarters, intensive gardens and recreational spaces, residential courts, and richly decorated ceremonial spaces in sprawling complexes along the Tigris.
Next, we will continue to another subtopic, which is the characteristic of Abbasid architecture. The Abbasid mosque. The building of the Abbasid took a new method in the construction of mosques as reflected in their size and character. Unlike the Umayyad who continued the stone tradition of Syria, the Abbasids adopt the Mesopotamian tradition of mud and baked brick construction, often arranged in decorative manner or carved and molded, with geometry and vegetal design. As you can see, on the left side, there is an example of panel with geometric pattern, and on the right side is a capital with canthus leaf, which is a vegetal design. The 9th century Abbasid architecture has foliated decoration on arch, pendant vault, muqarnan vault, and polychrome interlaced spandrels. As you can see, there is an example for the pendant vault, muqarnan vault, and polychrome interlaced spandrels. They built mosques on the monumental scale using brick construction, stucco ornament, and architectural form developed in Mesopotamian and other regions to the east. The mosque was decorated with marble panel and glass mosaic. There is an example for the marble panel in the mihrab of the Great Mosque of Cairo. On the right side, the mosaic glass used symmetric polygonal shade to create pattern that can continue indefinitely without repeating. This is another example of characteristic of Abbasid architecture.
A work of incredible finesse that alternates the geometric shapes carved into the stucco, a type of plaster, the raw material for all the cladding of the mosque. Of remarkable sobriety, as seen in the foundation of ablutions, a simple black marble placed in the middle of the vast courtyard, surmounted by a dome devoid of artifices. A mixture of plaster, glue, pulverized marble, slaked lime, chalk, and pigments, all bonded by water. Stucco allows the creation of thick coatings with an aspect and hardness of the stone, while leaving the craftsmen the freedom to fashion their creations by hand. Inherited from the Greeks and Romans, stucco is now a characteristic artistic signature of Abbasid art.
The Abbasid Palace. The palace complex containing hall, courtyards, living apartment, and a mosque. Palace at Samara, such as Al-Ashri and Al-Jiz, display the polylobe molding craft deeply into a trellis of arch, giving the appearance of a foliate arch. The floors sometimes can be a marble, but more often they are using tiles. The reception room of the palace at Samara had carved and molded stucco dedues, decorating the lower part of the wall, and stucco also decorate the door frame, wall niche, and arch. This is some example of the Abbasid Palace. On the left side, the Uqaidid Palace showing the pointed arch and burial vault of the Great Hall. The picture in the middle explains a polylobe molding craft deeply into a trellis of the arch. The picture on the right side showing the Al-Uqaidid Palace, which is they are using the tile floor. Lastly, this is the details for the craft or molded stucco dedues that are using on the lower part of the walls.
Let me introduce you guys one of the Abbasid architecture, which is the Great Mosque of Samara. First of all, the Great Mosque of Samara, or in Arabic pronunciation as Jami' Samaran al-Kabir, is a mosque from the 9th century located in Samara, Iraq. The mosque was commissioned in 848 and completed in 851 by one of the Abbasid Caliphs, which is Abu al-Fadl Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Mutasim Billah, better known as Al-Mutawakkil, who reigned in Samara from 847 until 861 century. At the time of the construction, the Great Mosque of Samara was the world's largest mosque. It is known for its 52 meters higher minaret encircled by a spiral ring. And for your information, Al-Mutawakkil hired artists and architects from all over the Abbasid Empire just to help him construct the Great Mosque of Samara. Let me tell you about history of the Great Mosque of Samara since it became the world's largest mosque of the time. Al-Mutawakkil commissioned the construction of the Great Mosque of Samara upon his succession to the Abbasid Caliph in the middle 9th century. While This sizable rectangular structure measured 38,000 square meters and was encompassed by an outer big brick wall supported by a total of 44 semicircular towers, including 4 corners one. And each time it was the world's largest mosque. One could enter the mosque through one of 16 gates. It has been over each entrance were several small arch windows. The outer wall includes 28 windows, with 24 of them being on the southern face, one for each of the aisles in the inner sanctuary, with the exception of the one with the mihrab. The roof of the mosque was supported by 24 rows of 9 piers in the sanctuary. 3 rows of 9 piers again in the Iraq arcades to the north, and each side having 22 rows of 4 piers. A rectangular mihrab with 2 marble columns on each side could be found positioned in the south wall of the mosque. Claims have been made that the Great Mosque of Samara could be compared to the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, as the glass mosaic was perceptible throughout the site. Every photograph provides evidence that an extensive enclave measuring 376 times 444 meters, which is 70 hectares, surrounded the mosque with a brick wall. This area is known as a ziyada. Directly 27.25 meters from the center of the mosque northwest stands the minaret al-Malwiyah, which is 55 meters high. Next, let me tell you about the architecture of the Great Mosque of Samara. First of all, I'm talking about the floor plan. The mosque is structured by a big brick wall, including 44 semicircular towers supporting the structure. The outer wall including 28 windows. 24 of them are facing the Qiblat. There is 1 window for each side, excluding the mihrab side. The building has a total of 16 doors that provide access. The interior of the mosque presents a large courtyard surrounded by all outside. The prayer hall was a large mihrab framed as an arch. There was a fountain in the center of the courtyard that was a curve and decorated in marble tiles and mosaic. This fountain was believed to be carved from a large stone and carried to this area by elephants. It was constructed by Caliph al-Wathiq. The traditional mosque courtyard was square. However, the Great Mosque of Samara portrayed a rectangular courtyard surrounded by these 2 layers of walls. It is known by historians and architects for the walls of the mosque to be covered in glass or glass panels. These will be in traditional blues, white, and golds used in many other mosques. Fragments of these panels have been found by archaeologists working on this one. The interior of the mosque has ceiling with a height of 11 meters, with a total of 464 pillars supporting this big brick ceiling. For the most part of the interior is plain, and the focus was a strong foundation set by continuous brick slab holding together. The height of the Malwiyah made it practical to be used for the azan. It is visible for a considerable distance in the area around Samara, and therefore may have been designed as a strong visual statement of the presence of Islam in the Tigris Valley. The minaret's unique spiral design is said by some to be delivered from the architecture of the Mesopotamia. This design, completed under Al-Mutawakkil, was unlike other minaret created in this time and anything else seen in the Islamic world because of its basis shape. The Mesopotamian ziggurats have a square base, while this minaret and other builds like in Iraq have a circular base with a twist spiral leading up the top. The minaret unique spiral design is said by some to be delivered from the architecture of the Mesopotamia. This design, completed under Al-Mutawakkil, was unlike other minaret created in this time or anything else seen in the Islamic world because of its basis shape. The Mesopotamian ziggurats have a square base, while in the minaret have a circular base with a twist spiral leading up the top.
The architecture of Ibn Tulun Mosque from the Abbasid Architecture subtopic. As you guys can see on the left, it is the picture of the Ibn Tulun Mosque. I will start off with a quick introduction for it. The name of the monument is Mosque of Ahmad Ibn Tulun. It is located in a slightly elevated region of the Sayyida Zainab district in Al-Hudayr district, Cairo, Egypt. The date of monument is on Hijrah 265, equivalent to 879 Domini, at Tulunid state during Abbasid period. Ibn Tulun Mosque is considered as the second oldest mosque extant in Egypt. Moving on to the short-term history of the mosque. It was built for Ahmad ibn Tulun, son of a Turkish slave of the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun. He was sent to Egypt as governor of Al-Fustat, but within 2 years, he had been made governor of the country. Shortly, by refusing to send the annual tribute to the Abbasid court, he established himself as an independent ruler of the province. His family ruled in Egypt for 135 years. Ibn Tulun founded a new royal city of rock called Jabal Yashkur near the Muqattam to the northeast of Al-Fustat, raising the Christian and Jewish that was located on the hill. The city that Ahmad ibn Tulun built was called Al-Qatta, descriptive of the allotment in which each group of his followers settled. In 905, when the Abbasid re-established control, the city was destroyed and plowed under. The mosque served as the new mosque, replacing the Mosque of The mosque was used for Fatimid ceremonies during the month of Ramadan. It was damaged when used as a shelter for pilgrims from North Africa to the Hijaz, but restored and refounded with madrasa-type functions at the behest of Mamluk Sultan Lajin in 1296. Let's jump on to the next one, which is the plan and architecture detailing of the monument. These two are the plan of the Ibn Tulun Mosque. The floor plan of the mosque assumed the form of a square measuring 26,318 square meters. The architectural layout adheres to the traditional plan for the mosque in the region, consisting of an open, square central courtyard, which is measure 92 meters square. In the middle of the courtyard is an ablution fountain, an innovation of the Mamluk Sultan Hosam al-Din Lajin. 4 porticos surround the courtyard. The largest is the eastern portico, which is the Qiblat, consisting of 5 arcades. As for the other 3 porticos, each of them consists of 2 arcades. On the north, west, and south sides, a large wall surrounds the mosque. Between these walls and the walls of the building is an open area called the Ziyadah, an example of which may also be seen in the Great Mosque of Samara in Iraq and in the Great Mosque of Susa in Tunisia. The Congregational Mosque of Ibn Tulun is considered to be one of the biggest mosques in Egypt, whose entire surface area, including which, is made of fired brick. This is called as minaret, which is placed in the middle of the mosque. The influence of the Great Mosque of Samara is manifest in the minaret built in the western Ziyadah, seen most obviously in the fact that the staircase winds itself around the outside body of the minaret and not within the interior, as is typical of mosques in the Islamic world. This is a design layout which is identical to the minaret of Great Mosque of Samara, which is known for its spiral form. The innovation and additions to the mosque by Sultan Hosam al-Din Lajin are considered as the most important and extensive to be carried out in the mosque. The mosque was transformed into a refuge for the handicapped and the elderly during the period 1890 until 1918. It was restored and the modern structure were removed. And this is some of the interior detailing which can be seen at the minaret and on the roof. The roof of the room behind the mihrab is supported by wooden corbels, a local version of similar element found in many buildings in North Africa and Al-Andalus. The Andalusian influence is also manifested in the use of double arch, horseshoe windows of the minaret, and the entrance to the minaret staircase, comprising a horseshoe arch with a rectangular molded frame, and in the stone supporting the cornice from the tunnel vault which carrying the bridge between the roof of the mosque and the minaret springs.
In conclusion of Abbasid architecture, Abbasid architecture, despite many conflicts during the Abbasid era, the architecture was strengthened and sentimental at the time, and it can still be used today due to the presence of wise representative. This demonstrates how powerful architecture was during the Abbasid era and how its influence outside the balance the use of architecture in terms of scales, materials, and decoration. Therefore, there are one lesson from this topic, that is Islamic built environment has led to the illegible urban structure, identity, and aesthetic value of urban design of Abbasid architecture. That's all from Group 10. Thank you.